this session coming up is Te Hāpai. It's our panel sessions where we have 3 kai kōrero, and they'll share their experience of how to have those courageous conversations. We talk about tuku atu, tuku mai, sort of like a serve and return, around how you have conversations, tuku atu, and how you take on those conversations, those hard conversations. So this session is tuku atu, tuku mai, courageous conversations. We have 3 awesome kai kōrero from around the motu, 2 in Ōtautahi and 1 in, I think in Hiretona could be, but they'll correct me when we get there. So kia mau mai whānau. Maybe we'll go and meet some of our kaimahi. You've already met Jason Tiatia, he uri no Hāmua. Jason is a brainwave trust Aotearoa kaiako based in Ōtautahi. Awesome dad, really passionate about supporting the revival of te reo and being an awesome sports coach. We know that our coaches are also those people that support whānau. So that's Jason. Our second kai kōrero is Hiraani Hutana. He uri no Ngāti Kahununu ki Porana Hau, me Ngāti Parau ki Waipiro. Oh, I love Waipiro. Oh, no, not Waipiro itself, but Waipiro ki Te Tai Rāwhiti. Got heaps of cousins there. Hiraani is a mama of 5. Oh, she's pukumahi, and has worked in the early childhood sector for 19 years. Aren't we lucky? She's passionate about putting and involving tikana Māori in all her practice, and she'll bring a good flavour to our panel today. And last of all, we've got the beautiful Aroha Lee, he uri no Ngāti Kuri o Naitahu e te Whanauna. She is a prevention education kaiako at STOP, also based in Ōtautahi, focusing actually on this kaupapa around courageous conversations. So we've got 3 awesome kai kōrero. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Hū, e nā hua, nā mihi. So, e mihi ana kia koutou toko toru. Maybe you just want to open up with a quick ko wai koutou and how you're feeling, Jace.
Yeah, mauri ora kia I tātou whānau, and tā lofa, mālosu fua. Yes, Jace Tiatia, thank you for the intro, beautiful intro. And it was quite shameful looking at those videos, that last video of me, I was like, oh. But anyway, yes, I'm happy to share my knowledge and experiences here in Ōtautahi, Samoan. My wife is Māori, Ngāti Kahungunu, and we have 3 beautiful tamariki. They speak languages, both languages, and they love kura kopa Māori. So looking forward to this kōrero.
Kia ora, Hiraani.
Oh, kia ora koutou, ko Hiraani Hutana hau. Ai, he uri tēnei o Ngāti Kahungunu. I'm really happy to be here. We're in Poranga Hau at the moment, at a karanga noho, facilitating. So I've just popped out my auntie's office, ready to share and be inspired as well. So tēnā koutou.
Aroha.
Kia ora tātou.
Aroha.
Ko aroha au, no koe ia. No Ōtautahi tōku kāinga i nāinei. I am obviously the facilitator with Stop Services. I'm here to share a little bit around courageous conversations, maybe in that space. Tricky conversations usually to have. I am the proud mama of 5 kōrero, ranging from the ages of 9 years to 22. Being a primary school teacher for 15 years prior to my mahi with Stop Services, yeah, definitely courageous conversations is right up my alley. So thank you for inviting me. I feel really privileged and humbled to be here.
I think because we, you talked about courageous conversations, and we've got this bio with this awesome kōrero from you. How do we create safe and inclusive spaces around having these courageous conversations?
How do we create safe places? I think I love the courageous conversation. But if you channel it just straight to aroha conversations, then straight away it's a safe conversation.
Aye. So,
and then it's courageous and all its mana and that. So that's how I would frame it from the get-go. To have an aroha conversation with our whānau, and then straight away it's safe. So, pia.
Ka pai. And sometimes even when we're having aroha conversations, when things get tricky, what are some of your strategies that you use, Jason, even in the coaching space? Because whether we're in family harm or family violence and the coaching, sometimes there's some angry people on those sidelines. What are some of your strategies around having those kōrero to some of those sideline coaches?
Oh man, I'm glad you brought that one up. That's a good example, actually. Some of our parents mean well, but sometimes the character comes out, and I can relate. My mum is usually one of those parents, and she's on the sideline and in Samoan and English and everything else that goes with it. So I try to encourage, if you do have a challenge, communicating or supporting in a way that's appropriate. We do praise them for looking for new ways or new methods, or breathing to start with. But really, tautoko what Hiraani's idea around leading with empathy, leading with aroha, and that way you're sort of acknowledging, hey, I know you're trying. Can you try a little bit harder, sort of thing. Keep going though, yeah.
For some of our kaimahi going into our whare, and we have to have, you can feel some wairua that, kids might have woken up and not been in a happy mood. And mum or the whānau just might need a kōrero, and just to come there. How do we regulate, Jason, how do we regulate the whānau's brain so that they can start thinking well? Because this is when we're having courageous conversations, we've got to get them to a place of aroha.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, because regulating means different things for different people and different, but it's actually just finding ways to have a really good conversation. We usually have a dinner time conversation, say, hey, I really loved how you did this, acknowledging that, and then, hey, tomorrow morning, be prepared. These are the things we need you to do, and I'll do this. Are you okay with that? So try and find ways to serve and return, because the tuku my example, it goes everywhere, every day. So I'm coming from my experience. I've got a 16, 14, and a 10-year-old, and a 16 and the 10-year-old share a room. So 16-year-old likes to laze around and take her time. The 10-year-old is a bit more organized, actually. She wants things precise and accurate. So we try to sort of make sure that they have their own strategies too, and try and empower them. But that's one strategy to look at. But just communicating that all the time.
Aroha, one kaupapa that we want to talk about is to have those conversations when we feel that family harm have happened that morning or even that evening. How do you broach that kōrero with whānau, or family sexual harm?
Yeah,
with
that
aroha.
Always a really challenging scenario to go into. When we're talking about that regulation concept, I think that it's also really important to remember that our regulation can assist in regulating others. So if we're actually ready for that, and we've processed a lot of it, and we've got our revs down real low, then hopefully we can transmit that and do a bit of co-regulating in that space. But I usually like to lean in with, can I help you? Is there any way that I can up you and assist? And just opening the platform for somebody to come forward and taking time to allow that conversation to come forward. I feel like if we force any kind of reo that isn't naturally coming, we normally get a barrier, a wall as well. So, whether that looks like some form of manaki coming into the home, if I brought us a cup of tea today and got these snacks, and how the tamariki, let's do that mahi together, let's keep this real calm, and then go gently together.
And I think that's a big kaupapa, is really about how do we go gently into these kaupapa, because whānau, and with our whānau workers within Family Start, they're going into kaina. So how do you keep yourself safe? How do you keep yourself safe, Hiraani, when you know that a kaupapa's happened and kua raru te whānau? So how do you what are your sort of own experience around keeping yourself safe?
Well, I just try and keep it at marae, at the forefront, whakaaro rangatira ki te rangatira, so chief to chief. So if I'm going into the home, or if I'm having a conversation with whānau members at the kohungahunga, I'm doing it with viewing them as rangatira and keeping my rangatiratanga. And because the end goal is to respect our little rangatira, which are tamarikini. So that's kind of where I keep myself safe by me te tuku atu, whakaaro rangatira ki te rangatira. You can go into wānanga with that, and that can look different to many people. And then your body just flows from there, because you exude that aroha, you have a good countenance on your kanohi, you're speaking respectfully, and so a scene is setting, all the raru is coming away. And then and another, picking up on what Aroha said, when you just let things flow, and then wairua can come in, where, aye.
Ka pai. And that's the whole thing, is like, how do we set wairua when the wairua is heightened, How do we get it back down to a place of, I think about kurawaka, that, that essential clay that Tāne Mahuta needed to form the first wahine hine ahuone, and he went and searched for that clay kurawaka. So it's like regulating, and actually here I found that essential place. So when we think about what essential tools you might have within your own kete, what are the tools that you take into kaina or working with whānau that support you to have these conversations? Aroha?
I think I'm a bit naughty in that whole concept of always kai.
Nice.
Always no, always love, like, in my space, like, and for a lot of Māori, I would anticipate that we're still feeling this vibe, is that, the food is love. And that's part of my language to you, is that the offering of manaaki. I also sometimes will check myself. So as a tool, I'm like, how are you feeling about this? Am I triggered? Do I need to unpack something before I head into that space? Just to go with as little judgment and bias as possible, because we all carry it. It's a safety mechanism that our brain makes us hold. But yeah, and just leaning in with empathy. I think that is kind of one of my superpowers, because I feel really deeply, and sometimes it's really helpful in those spaces.
I think that's really important when thinking about unconscious bias, and I really like that you brought it up. So when we think about unconscious bias, how do we promote self-reflection for our kaimahi that go into whare? How do you do that, Jason, in the work that you do in supporting whānau?
Well, it's a self-talk for me. So when I jump back in the car, or even go back to the office, I just like to debrief for myself, just thinking I could have said this better, I could have maybe handed this, or sort of set the scene a little bit better, or we're always quite hard on ourselves. But even coming back to your own brain, just around the amygdala. The amygdala is the smoke alarm that is always going to be there, firing things around protecting yourself, but also the hippocampus, we want to sort of create better memories, better experiences. So for me reflecting, I guess the biggest one is making sure that you always want to do better than last time. So the next step is, these are the things I'll work on for next time. And it doesn't happen overnight, believe me, but at least you're heading towards and making the efforts, and actually consciously trying to have a go. I think that's the important side, is that don't be too hard on yourself. There's a couple of things that people do is the pain and pleasure, but also we like to point out things that we're always wrong with, but it's always not the correct way. It's actually being kind to yourself first, and then actually evaluate. So that's how I always try to think above the line. So above the line is always that positive thinking or solution-based, and not so much looking after the below the line, because we're as humans, we're very, very good at below the line, sort of, you're critical and you're not this and you're that. But instead of that pointing the finger, we can actually go, actually, I could have done better. These are the things I would do. So that reflecting is a big part. So thanks for that opportunity.
Awesome. Ka pai. And Hiraani, you're at a karana wānana, and you're facilitating a karana wānana. You've got a different voice. When we think about tikana and the use of karana. How can we use our karana voice to bring our whānau together and back together?
Karanga voice to bring whānau together. Well, it's a call, eh? So, he kupu whai oro, so it has a message and it has a vibration. So it's kind of like this wānanga here. So we're going to go into homes and we're going to talk to whānau and we're going to have, a message. There's going to be a conversation, but there's also an oro, a vibration. So you need to, as a tangata, as a person, tāne, wahine, find out kaiako, a social worker, what's your oro, what's your vibration? So what does that look like for you? And so for some of us, it might be the kai, that manakitanga. For some of us, like tangibly, I love whakatauki kāri, and I set the scene, or, sis, I got this for you. So I just thought this related to what we were talking about the other week, and then immediately you're going into an aroha conversation, you're going into wānanga, so we all have different vibrations and oro and way of doing things to get a message across wha tamariki.
And it's a main, when we think about our whānau workers, is around how do they go into a kaina and make sure that they're ora and they're well. And you talked about you always take your own tools, the bro is really reflected, and Aroha is always shared that whole thing around that bias space and making sure that you're in your wairua is in a space where you're not being biased around what you're hearing and what you're seeing in kaina. So I think one big part for me is, sometimes I don't know how to, even just with my own whānau, how do you address a problem when someone is older than you? As a tamaiti, how do you have those conversations? Jason, because in this workshop, in this panel, we've got 13 kids, 3 people. So we've got a big whānau here. How do you have those courageous conversations with our tamariki so that the parents can have that?
Look, I live with my parents at the back. They've got their own unit and they have their own way of raising kids too, right? They raised me and I've turned out not too bad, Mara. But I say I'm okay. But the thing is, I guess, there's some of the strategies on how to, I guess, send that message to the mums and dads or the elderly or the mātua of our world. And they're the wise ones, of course. But we also have good knowledge of how to do it today. And I think education is always a give and take. So for me, I've had that tough conversation with my own mum. I said to mum, you can't hit the kids anymore. You can't do that. Yeah. And she's like, why not? And I'm like, Mum, calm down. I'm okay. So I said, look, Mum, we'll have a coffee soon. Okay. We come back and we keep building on that longer conversation. And she comes around and says, look, thanks, son. I appreciate that. And in our own language too. So using your reo, or what we use, reo hamo. And it's a beautiful thing. Now we're a lot more closer. She's doing her best. She's regulating her own mind and her own brain, and even her body changes too. So it's an important sign. Working with our elders is an important part because they want to be part of our lives, the kids' lives as well. So keep enhancing that, keep the respect at the forefront, and then keep challenging them too.
And I think that's a really important one. We've probably got 2 minutes left to go. Aroha, this is a pātai for you. How do we keep that dynamic of whānau, the voice, and making sure that everyone's been heard in this kōrero? Because I think that sometimes we forget making sure that everyone's voice has been heard. What are your strategies?
In kind of context to the question that was just asked before about tamariki, for us, I actually follow quite avidly some of Liz Hart's work. From tūpuna parenting. So I definitely, I'm a fangirl in that space and share that with all of my whānau as much as I can, and keep reminding all of my whānau that all of our children carry that tapu and that mana, and how do we continue to enhance their mana. And the way that we do that as really amazing parents is by allowing their voice to be heard and acknowledged and received well. which can be quite challenging when you've been raised in a whānau like mine, where you did exactly what you were told when you were told. Otherwise, there was quite harsh consequence here. So just once again, still going gently, because we can't change the whole fabric of the way that we used to be and do overnight. But it is beautiful and lovely to have those supporting resources coming out of that space to keep enhancing that kaupapa that we all need to be heard, and we're in this waka together.
Ka pai. And I think that's a really important thing, is that we're in the waka together and you don't have to go it alone. What I've heard from you, you don't go it alone. Who are your support systems when you're when it is a hard out kōrero? Who supports you, Hiraani?
Oh, well, it's your colleagues. So if you're working along, you're on one-on-one waka. So you're one mind, one sound, and you have those conversations. And I guess, you'll have your partners at home. And even further, like you've got your kaumātua. So I love that, we can have our courageous conversations with our kaumātua, but we actually can go to them for advice. And when we go and serve with them, then we can unpeel some of the tohu and gems that they have ready to drop for us, but as well as have little conversations of what it looks like now in our world.
We're probably going to go into our pātai whānau. Do you find whānau respect you more after a courageous conversation? That's to anyone.
I'll quickly answer that one for me. Yeah, I think it does strengthen the conversation. It doesn't happen, like I said earlier, it doesn't happen overnight, but they do come around and actually they're curious again about the next step and the next step. So I think that's important to understand. It's courageous because you're brave enough to talk about about the elephant in the room, and then it becomes, actually it wasn't too bad. So I think that's one of those things. Once you start the conversation, be brave, keep holding on to that and working forward with it. So yes, it does work.
Yes, and I think it has been brave, and I think the other pātai, and this is to you, Hiraani, what's your best advice when working with whānau who have dishonest about what is actually happening?
Yeah, that one would be tricky. Dishonest, I guess. Then maybe we just, as a kaimahi, look at what the connection is. So if they're being dishonest with you, then obviously that's just something that they have in their kete to get a means. So I would look back to how I connect. So it's connection. So it's not going to happen straight away. And if I'm going to keep whakaaro rangatira ki te rangatira, then we're not going to have a big fight about the dishonesty straight away. So I would re-look at my strategies and how I'm best connecting with that whānau and try again. Yeah,
Ka pai.
if that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And I think that's a big kaupapa. When we think about the next pātai, and I will put this on to you, Aroha, how do you have conversations when topics like sexual abuse is your topic for the rā with a whānau?
Initially, any conversation that I have about any topic, really, I like to give an acknowledgement to the person that is offered the kōrero, especially if we're talking about, if we are leaning into the sexual harm space. That's not an easy conversation for anybody to have, regardless of what space you're in. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but usually harm works with people that have made mistakes, and have caused the harm. So for us, we definitely, we're always championing, like we want to encourage people to change behaviours so our communities are safer, and then also still acknowledging and holding that that person that the harm has happened to really, really gently and carefully. How do I have the conversations? Usually, once again, with lots and lots of care. And usually, like, I wouldn't promise anything in regards to if we're talking about disclosures. Sometimes help needs to be sought in other spaces, so definitely don't want to promise something that I can't honour. And slowly, strategically working a plan forward, because these things generally can't be resolved overnight.
Tika taho. One of our tuku mai reflections is that session had made her made me reflect on the strategies I use to communicate with different members of my own whānau, or my own family, when I have these tough conversations regarding how to respond and deal with these matters. As a new member, staff member here, this is another Tuku mai kōrero member here, but nurturing the relationship will lead to better reception to hara kōrero, exactly what all three of you talked about. The last reflection kōrero is, I believe if we teach our whānau the way we want them to be, we should show them how to. It's interesting, that's a nice reflection, because a lot of whānau that we've worked with, sometimes they don't know what love looks like, and it looks like a different love to what a lot of whānau, especially in the family harm space. Don't forget whānau, we've still got heaps more kōrero of time to put any more questions in. I think one question from me is, what are your top tips, probably each of you, maybe 2 top tips around having courageous, setting the scene to have a courageous conversation. And we'll jump to the sis Hiraani. Tuatahi, same question.
Top tips, or it's in the word aroha, aro, present. So be present. So that looks like lots of things. So it can look like, setting the scene physically as well, but being present with that whānau, knowing who they are, what's happening, the kaupapa, and ha essence, so ko te ha te essence, so sharing in your goodwill, in your aroha, and it will be reciprocated and might not come straight away if the circumstances are huge. Those are like the little tools I have, is like be present and in ha to ha, in essence of aroha, and getting a good outcome for our tamariki.
Pehea koe, Jason, what are your 2 tips for the whānau?
I would say, all of us would agree, food.
Yes.
Food is the key part. Sharing, breaking bread with people is a really awesome thing. And I like to build rapport just by having a laugh. Yeah, just start with sometimes you just need to be vulnerable ourselves sometimes, but not too vulnerable, oversharing, but something that people can relate to. And I think that's one of our strengths on the panel, is that we build rapport first before we even dive into any issue. So that would be me, just sharing, if it's a coffee, if it's a different beverage or food. I think that they'll connect us a little bit more before even going into any other issues.
Ka pai. Pehea koe, Aroha?
So for me, even before I walk through that door, it's once again that assumption, that bias, like just checking myself, making sure that I, have that I'm that I'm offering the best modi that I can at that time and place, and just going with aroha, and with love and empathy, kindness. Yeah,
we've still got stuff coming through from a Samoan perspective, acknowledging cultural sensitivity to any sex topics. How would you address this with a mature elderly community and clients regarding sexual harm and education? I'm going to give this to Kea Koe, whether it's Jason or either Aroha or the whānau. Who would like to answer this one?
Well, I'm probably not the expert in that space, but being Samoan...
I'm smiling at you, Jason.
Being Samoan, we've had in my own personal, journey. It's a really hard one. That's because we're very private people, and at the same time community focused too. So for me, I would carefully tread around the cultural side, building whoever the leadership are in that space, and actually slowly before sort of diving deep as well. So it's a real challenge. I know I've seen some great outcomes, and sometimes not so good, because it's a real issue. But if we have in mind the intent is to keep our kids safe and support the whānau member or members, then I think there will always be some form of a good result, if that makes sense. So being Samoan, I know culturally le va is a really important space. So building carefully before even, so if you're going to meet with that issue, having a minister or someone like that in that space, or and sometimes the opposite, or having someone who's totally outside the community. So it really depends. So whawhai.
Hara. Kia ora te whānau. I think, do you have a kōrero Aroha or?
Well, I was thinking at an organisational level, this isn't within our home, but all of our mahi that we do moving forward in regards to prevention, we work alongside our mana whenua, where they have been feeding into our kaupapa and critiquing our mahi, so that, that really earnest contribution from our whānau has enabled us to have far more frequent conversations about keeping whānau safe. So I think it's pretty amazing for a tauiwi organisation to be this committed, and I'm really, really proud to work in this service. But I think when it comes to when we're talking about people, our kaumātua, I would say it's very similar in Māori whānau. My grandparents really struggle with the mahi that I do. Not that they're not proud of me, but we've always talked about family matters being very private, very, very private, and you don't air your dirty laundry and things like that. So, and as we know, the statistics for harm in Māori whānau are quite high. Yeah. I do need to remind them that the reason that we have to do the work that we're doing is because we love our children fiercely. And so just that acknowledgement of reminding reminding my own whānau why we need to be brave and courageous, it goes down okay. I don't know how it would work with whānau outside of mine, but I think the people that are having those that type of kōrero needs a really solid connection. Otherwise, you would probably be met with resistance, yeah.
Ka pai. And those are great. That's awesome advice from all of you. Tēnei ka mihi kia tātou, kua kapi te wā kia tātou. We've finished for today, and a real big mihi to our awesome kai kōrero i te rānei. E mihi kau nei ki a koutou tokotoru. We're lucky to have had your kōrero and awesome. And tēnei te mihi kia koutou.